Okay, we had a bunch of roster questions, and we'll start with this one. Jeff from New York. Hey, Mary Kay, it feels like a pretty complete roster at this point. If you're facing the Browns this year, what are the weaknesses?
Well, you know what? Right? I mean, after this draft, I think the only thing that we were able to nitpick a little bit about when we did our wrap up was we thought, well, they still may have left themselves a tiny bit short at cornerback, right? I think some of us thought that maybe another cornerback, two cornerbacks would have come from this draft. So instead, they went with a safety in the late round in Richard. How do you say his last name again? I'm having
Richard LeCount.
LeCount. Okay. So they went with the safety there instead of finding another cornerback. So that's just one area that you have to think about. But they still do have MJ Stewart that can play that nickel for them. So I think they'll be okay, even if they had to use Troy Hill on the outside along with all the other guys that they have, and then they had to plug MJ in at nickel. They should be okay there, and they've got safeties that can play different roles as well. So it should work out fine. That is the only thing I can possibly think of.
It's really hard to find the soft spots on either side of the ball right now.
Right.
Maybe linebacker, because you're so young there, and we don't know exactly what Owusu-Koramoah is going to be. We don't know what kind of progress Jacob Phillips is going to make. It's just stuff like that. But if Owusu-Koramoah is a playmaker, even if he's a little out of position here or there, or he does some things that aren't awesome all the time, if he can make some plays for some turnovers, get to the quarterback, then that kind of covers up that weakness. So yeah, it's really hard to find a weakness on this roster, which is kind of a wild thing to say, but good luck. Good luck, opposing coaches.
Yeah. I mean, last off season, as we know, they completely focused on the offense. This offseason, they completely focused on the defense to the point where, Dan, I mean, I wrote about this. We all know. I mean, they could have 9 new starters on their defense, which is, I've never been a part of an overhaul like that. That is a massive overhaul. The two guys that we know will be starting are Miles and Denzel Ward. Beyond that, there could be 9 new faces in that starting lineup, which is absolutely incredible.
So speaking of those 9 new faces, Jim in Canfield wants to know, hey, Mary Kay, much has been made the past 2 seasons about getting guys for Joe Woods' defense. Is that too short-sighted? Coordinators last with teams even shorter than head coaches. If they're great, they become head coaches. If they fail, they get fired. So I guess, the question is, are the Browns being short-sighted building this thing for Joe Woods' vision? I have an answer for this, but I want to hear what you have to say about that.
Well, I think that, first of all, they're drafting a lot of players that are so versatile that they can do so many different things. So I think they'll be good in that regard. And then the traits that they are finding in their defensive backs, I think, are pretty universal. So I don't think that's an area that they have to worry too much about. Same thing with the defensive line. I mean, their defensive tackles can play in any kind of a scheme, and the same thing with their ends. The area that I think is a little bit unique and different are the linebackers. They're going with the smallish linebacker that sort of almost doubles as a safety, hybrid linebackers that can cover those tight ends and cover those backs, but they're smaller. So I think that's the only area. If you had to start all over on defense, I think that's the only area where you might have to have a different kind of player there, because these are pretty scheme specific. However, I also think that the defense that they're running now, even if Joe Woods left, even if Joe Woods got a promotion or whatever the case may be, I still think that the system is probably going to remain intact, and that you would promote somebody else. They've got a lot of great coaches on this defensive staff. I think somebody would step up into his place. I don't envision throwing the scheme out the window.
Yeah, and I just wonder how much of this scheme is, it's Joe Woods' scheme, but I wonder how much of that is like Joe Woods came in and kind of aligned with what they envisioned the defense should look like. A little more focus on positionless guys, that 3 safety, hybrid linebacker type of player. if it was just more of a match between front office and defensive coordinator, and also what Kevin Stefanski wants on defense as well. I don't know how married they are to the scheme because of Joe Woods. It might just be Joe Woods fits what they want, and it was just a match.
Yes, it's probably 6 of one, half a dozen of the other in that regard. It's probably the kind of defense that Kevin Stefanski wanted to run. It's the kind of defense the Browns wanted to run. And so Joe sort of fit that paradigm. And again, there are enough really good defensive coaches on his staff that I think that they would carry that forward. I mean, it is sort of the wave of the future in terms of the kind of linebacker that they're bringing onto the team. The one scout that I talked to today said, Jeremiah, I'm just so much easier just to call him Jeremiah. Jeremiah, he believes, is going to be able to chase down Lamar Jackson. And he said, that's what you have in the AFC North. You've got to find guys that can chase down Lamar Jackson. And teams do draft that way. Crazy as it sounds. I heard there was a debate. I heard them debating this on the radio today. But teams do think that way. You've got to try to figure out how you're going to win your division. And that, of course, requires getting past the best teams in your division.